Hi again then guys, and welcome to another Forza Horizon 3 speed build, this time again for another DLC car, the Honda NSX, or specifically the Acura NSX, the new shape machine. Now for this tune, we're actually doing something a little bit different, because this car has performance which doesn't necessarily meet the level that you'd probably expect it would, or hope that it would, unless of course I'm missing some little glitch somewhere that can alter that. But even with its full performance or full power pack, 1200 horsepower, all that kind of stuff, you're still only looking at much lower speeds than most of its rivals. So what I decided to do is to change up the gearbox setup a little bit and make it more of a niche tune, something a bit special, something a bit quirky as well. Now as far as the upgrades, I've gone for the V10, as I said, that 1200 horsepower motor. For the drivetrain, I'd recommend keeping all-wheel drive. You could change it if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend it. As far as the aspiration, the twin turbo is the best option for the peak power, and then for the rest, you guys know the drill. Lower that weight, increase the power, fit all of your racing parts, and then this is where it gets a bit different, because if you want great performance out of this car, then basically all you need to do is fit the parts, because the performance itself doesn't change a huge amount, at least from what I've seen in my time tuning the gearbox. It doesn't change that much. The top speed doesn't really jump that extra 15-20 miles per hour that a car like this typically would when you tune it. So what I decided to do instead was to simplify the gearbox, because of course you've got 9 gears to be working with, but instead of that I've basically turned this into a 3-speed vehicle. But as you can see from the benchmark, it's not a slow 3-speed vehicle. 2.2 to 60, 3.7 to 100, and 244 flat out. Now if you leave it with the stock gear ratios, you're looking at similar kinds of acceleration, about 2.2, 2.3 to 60, about 4 seconds to 100, and around 244, 243. You can get it to do 245, but not exactly a massive increase. So as you can see, I've put the final drive all the way down to 2.2. Then for the gears, I'd recommend having 9th, 8th, 7th, and 6th all the way down, because you don't use those at all. Then as far as first, we've got that on 2.78, then 1.7, then 1.18, and then 0.8, 0.6, and as I said, all the rest are 0.5. Although even the 0.8 and 0.6 don't really matter, because you're only using 3 speeds. Now as far as the alignment, I've gone for neutral, camber and tow, as I usually would, 4 degrees of caster. For the anti-roll, I've got those on 27 and 47, springs on 135, 230, and I've opted for pretty much the stock ride height, just under 10 centimeters. Dampers we've got on 11, 17, 5 and 8. Aero of course doesn't apply. And for the diff, I've got 100% on acceleration, 0 for decel, and a 70% balance in favour of the back end. Now it is important to note that if you do decide to copy what I've done with the gearbox, then you don't necessarily need to have it set on 70%, because off the line it performs in a much more similar way to something like a Tesla, because the gears are much longer and you can easily get over 100 miles per hour in first gear. You don't really need to have all that power going to the front, so you could take it up to 80 or even 90, or, as I said earlier, you could make it rear-wheel drive if you wanted to. In the case of this car, I've kept 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive for the cornering and for the off-road side of things, but again, you can make it rear-wheel drive if you want to, because you don't really get that wheel spin off the line. Now that's it for the tune. This tune is not on my storefront, so if you want to copy it, you'll need to follow this tutorial rather than downloading it. But now let's actually take it out on the street to see how a 3-speed version actually works. Now with the performance that this car has and the way in particular that it delivers its acceleration, it can be beaten under some circumstances, such as for instance off the line. Some cars will launch in a slightly more rabid way, but as I said, it's kind of like a Tesla in as much as the acceleration is very fluid. It's similar to a turbine as well. It's just that relentlessly building feeling of power and torque just whisking you down the road. Having those 3 speeds allows you to evenly distribute the acceleration rather than having one really long gear, but at the same time having 9 gears is cool, so either way you could go for that if you want to. Now as far as overall ability, it does jump up into 4th gear if you bump, or if you go over a bump in the road, or if you go on a downhill section. So I would recommend having a manual gear selection rather than auto, so that it doesn't do that. Or if you don't want to use manual, you could extend third gear just a little bit more, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 lower, just to prevent that from happening. But overall, if you do decide to use this kind of novelty tune for the NSX, which gives you basically the same performance as with the full 9 gears, but with a more simple setup, then obviously I hope you have a lot of fun with it. But that's it overall for this tune, and if you'd like to check out other high-performance tunes like this, and some more conventional ones as well, you can of course check those out here on the channel. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.